All right, Saturday night, we are live here on the Panther-Lair show, the Panther-Lair Post-Game. After Pitt beats Virginia Tech 45-29, that's the nuts and bolts of it. And I think everyone here watched what happened in that game, whether you were at Acrisure Stadium or you were watching on television at home, or maybe you just followed along on Twitter. However it is that you ended up observing that game, you know what happened in that game. You know the big storyline in that game, and it's Israel Abanikanda. And I don't know, I mean, like, we can sit here and talk for a little bit. We can talk about some different things and discuss different things. I can tell you about the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I can tell you that you should subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Right over there, somewhere around there, there's a little blue rectangle. It says subscribe. You should click that button. We would appreciate that. You should like this video. That's big for us, too. We appreciate that for sure. And I can tell you about Panther-Lair.com. The most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Could tell you about that. I could tell you about all those things, but when you break a record that stood for about 47 years, a record that was set by, one of the greatest players in school history, I think we could go off down a long path of debating the best players in school history, but whoever you think is the best, the top 5 players in school history, you're going to talk about Tony Dorsett. I mean, that's inevitable that his name is going to get brought up. And anytime you get into that, stratosphere, anytime you break a record that he set, it feels like you're kind of putting it off to talk about anything else. And there's a lot to talk about in this game. There's a lot to talk about in a game that was ultimately a two-score win, going 45-29. There's a lot, I think, to say about the offense, for sure, outside of Israel Abanikanda. I think there's a lot to say about the defense, for sure. There's some special teams issues, although there's some good special teams play. There was some special teams issues. But how can you start by talking about anything other than number 2? It was a sensational performance, and he was dynamite from the start. He had more than 100 yards in the first half. He gets to a point where he's got 218, and where do you have at that point? 5 touchdowns. And you say, this guy is amazing. Like, this is an incredible game. If you stopped right there, it's a 218-yard game with 5 touchdowns. And you'd say, that's a really, really good game. But it didn't stop right there. And on the very next play, pretty much, the next time Pitt got the ball back, is one handoff, and he goes 80 yards. 80 yards. Virginia Tech misses a field goal. Pitt gets the ball at the 20, one handoff, and he goes 80 yards, and now he's got 298 and 6 touchdowns, tying the Pitt school record for rushing touchdowns in a game, set in like 1910. So you're talking about a century-old record of the rushing touchdowns in a game. And the next time Pitt gets the ball back, he needs 5 yards to tie Tony Dorsett, 6 to break, and he gets exactly 6. And then on the next snap, he adds another 16, just so the next guy who comes along has an even harder time breaking the record. He could have stopped at 304. He got the first down of that drive. He needs 5 yards to tie, 6 to break, and he gets 6. That could have been it. But he plays one more snap and runs for 16, cramps up a little bit and comes out of the game, understandably. But he sets the record at 320 rushing yards, ties the record with 6 touchdowns, ties the ACC record with 6 rushing touchdowns in a game. According to ESPN, becomes the first BCS or Power 5 running back to go for 300 yards and 6 touchdowns in a game since Ricky Williams in 1998. There's like 25 years ago, 24 years ago, Ricky Williams. And that's the level that Israel Abanikanda is at, and he wasn't doing it against Rhode Island or New Hampshire. He wasn't doing it in an FCS game. He wasn't doing it against a Group of 5 team. He was doing it against Power 5 conference competition, against a pretty good Virginia Tech defense, a defense that I was looking at their rushing totals. Gave up 84 yards on the ground to Old Dominion, gave up 4 yards on the ground to Boston College, held Wofford to 38. Now they gave up 218 to West Virginia and $160 to North Carolina. So these last 2 games, they've taken a hit on rush defense, and they started off as like a top 20 rush defense. I don't know where they were coming into this game, but after you give up 320 to a single guy and 326 total, your numbers are gonna take a bit of a hit. And I think, like, I'm absolutely gonna sit back and say Izzy Abanikanda earned every one of those yards he got, but it really was sort of a combo effort of two things going on, because he needed the holes that he got. And he got some really good holes to run through. And then he was able to use, when the hole was there, he got to the hole and then he took off. His first touchdown, nobody was catching him. His 80-yard touchdown, nobody was catching him. I thought, he had the 10-yard touchdown, which was his fifth touchdown run. And that was the one that made it 38-29. And that was a two-play drive. They started the Virginia Tech 49 after the John Morgan forced fumble, which was great because that number 80, Caleb Smith, 9 catches for $152. The kid was doing everything in this game, number 80. And he catches this pass on, it was a 3rd and 5. And he catches it for a first down. And as he turns around, John Morgan, a defensive end who for some reason is down there, say it with me, I'll have to watch the tape and see what he was doing down there. But he puts his shoulder into the guy, knocks the ball loose, and Shane Simon recovers it. Pitt gets the ball at the 49, and they come out with Daniel Carter on the field, who really didn't get a lot of opportunities. Daniel Carter didn't have much work at fullback today. But Daniel Carter ends up throwing a second-level block that lets Izzy Abanikanda go for 29 yards. And then Virginia Tech hits him laid out of bounds, puts the ball at the 10, and he runs in for a touchdown there. But when the block was there, you know what I mean? And he saw that Carter was going to seal that edge for him at the second level. He was gone. He knew he had it. And it was the same way on the 80-yard run. It was the same way on the first touchdown run. The line and the tight ends and the receivers and the fullback or whoever was in would give him a little bit of an opportunity, and his natural talent took advantage of that. Now, why isn't he, why have there been sort of middling performances at different points? And it's hard to say right now for Izzy Abanikanda as he sits with was 830 yards through 6 games when he didn't play in the second half last week, and really didn't do much against West Virginia either. I mean, you're talking about basically doing it in 4.5 games. But as he sits with 830 yards, it's hard to say that there are many middling performances. But when the run game hasn't clicked, why hasn't it clicked? And I think those holes weren't getting open. And we talked through the week, I talked about, shifting guys around on the offensive line, missing guys here and there. And they were still missing guys today. Carter Warren didn't play. Owen Drexel is still out. Gabe Hoyt played, but rotated with Matt Gonsalves, kind of moved in and out at right tackle, missed a significant chunk, I think, in the second half. Looked like he got hurt at one point. But maybe they were able to find a little bit of a rhythm. Maybe this is something the offensive line can build on with the run blocking to open up some more of those holes, because you've got 2 guys now, and you might even almost include Vincent Davis, but let's just talk about Izzy Abanikanda and Rodney Hammond. You've got 2 guys who don't need a lot. You've just got to give them a little bit of an opportunity. You've just got to make a little bit of space, and these guys can really make something happen. Now, I think you need to make even less space for Hammond than you do for Izzy, just because Hammond seems to be even better than Izzy Abanikanda at finding that hole. But these 2 guys, if you give them just a little bit of space, you get a little bit of a crack in the defense, they're gonna make plays. And they've shown that. Rodney Hammond has shown it in virtually every game he's played, and Izzy Abanikanda has shown it a bunch this season. I mean, again, 129 carries for 830 yards and 12 touchdowns, 12 rushing touchdowns. He doesn't need a lot. You've just got to give him a little bit of an opportunity. And when he gets that opportunity, look out. Look out, because he's explosive. And as someone who sat here before the season and predicted that he would lead the ACC in rushing this year, I'm feeling great. But I've been touting Izzy Abanikanda as a pro running back for a while now. And he just never really got the consistent opportunities to do it in previous years. Well, he's getting those opportunities this year, and he's absolutely delivering. And we could talk a long time about Izzy Abanikanda. We could talk a long time about this running game. We could talk a long time about Rodney Hammond potentially coming back after the bye, because he was out there, he was in uniform, he warmed up. It looked like he might be able to go, so it certainly seems like he's close to coming back. But of course, we know there's a reality that you're not going to be able to run like this against everyone. You've got 6 more opponents to play. They're not all probably going to give you the opportunities for 300 rushing yards every week. If they do, that's great. But you know what? Even if they do, you're going to have to make some plays in the passing game. And I mean, well, we've been on this show for 10 or 11 minutes. I guess we might as well segue into it. I don't know what the solution is here. It's becoming more and more apparent what the problem is. It's becoming more and more apparent after 6 games that, look, let's say it this way. All right, we've been told that the wide receivers are not getting in their spots. They're not being sharp enough. They're not being detailed enough. They're not getting open. And I think there's probably a lot of truth in all those things. We've been told that those guys haven't been good enough, and that it looks like Kedon Slovis is holding the ball too long or not making decisions because those guys aren't doing what they're supposed to do. And I think there probably are times where that happens. He threw one pass to Jaden Bradley, where Bradley almost got killed because there were 3 defenders around him, and there were 3 defenders around him because Gavin Bartholomew was standing about 1.5 yards away. I can't imagine, and I know opinions being what they are about Frank Cignetti, and everyone's got different opinions about it, I gotta think he didn't draw up a play that would have Jaden Bradley and Gavin Bartholomew in basically the same spot. Gotta think. I could be wrong about that. I've never been an offensive coordinator. I don't know. But it seems like they probably didn't draw it up that way. Which means something went wrong, right? Something's not getting executed properly. And you could say that about a lot of parts of this passing game right now, and a lot of elements in the passing game. But and maybe the coaches would continue to maintain that it's the wide receivers. The wide receivers aren't being good enough. And I would say, yes, the wide receivers have not been good enough. But neither is the quarterback. I mean, the quarterback is not making the throws. And at some point, like, I get being risk averse. I get wanting to avoid mistakes. I get wanting to make sure you take care of the football. I get wanting to play, even if you want to go so far as to call it ball control offense and protect the ball and let your defense take care of business. I understand all those things. It's fine. And to a large extent, it makes sense. But you got to take chances. You have to be willing to throw the ball. And this game, and we'll look at what I'll go check what the numbers are on Pro Football Focus for pressures, but Kedon Slovis was sacked once. Let me see what officially, there usually end up being more pressures cited on Pro Football Focus than what they give the official box score for the quarterback hurries. They did give Virginia Tech 6 quarterback hurries. They gave Pitt 10. But 1 sack. Kedon Slovis ended up with 2 rushing attempts. So 1 sack and basically 1 scramble. I think he scrambled a couple times and threw the ball away. But for the most part, I thought the protection was pretty solid tonight. I thought they did a pretty good job giving him a clean pocket to work with. And it's still, that hesitation was still there. The holding on to the ball was still there. The reluctance to throw the ball down the field, even when there were options, that reluctance was still there. At some point, you are going to have to give these guys a chance to make a play. There was the pass to Bub Means on 4th and 3 where he's double covered. I didn't hate it. Yeah, it looked like there were some options where he probably could have gotten the first down either by running or by, a shorter pass. Really the worst case scenario. I just saw I have a text message because I left my binoculars in the press box, and my good friend Jerry DePaula asked me if those were mine. So I apologize. Usually if I get a text message, I would not interrupt the show to tend to it, but Jerry's probably still in the press box and about to leave. So I'm gonna text Jerry back. I'm gonna say, darn it, yes. Do you mind grabbing them for me? And we'll give Jerry a special shout out if he's able to do that. Left my binoculars in the press box. Darn it. I was really on a roll there talking about Kedon Slovis. So that pass on 4th and 3, right? I think there probably were opportunities to pick up the first down, taking a shot into the end zone, giving Bub Means a chance to make a play. your worst case scenario there is an incomplete pass, because if it's intercepted, you're actually going to gain yards. I forget where they were at. Let's see what Jerry said. Jerry said he got it. My man. Say what you will about Jerry DePaula. He truly is one of the nicest guys in Pittsburgh sports media. He doesn't deserve near the abuse that he gets in certain segments, but shout out to Jerry. He is the man. I'm going to tell him that right now. I'm going to say, you are awesome. Thanks, Jerry. And have a great... Whoops. This is a riveting show right here. Thanks, Jerry, and have a great weekend. All right. 4th and 3 from the 35. If the ball gets intercepted down there, either it's a touchback and it only goes to the 20, or it's, they bring it out for a few yards and they make the tackle. You gain field position in that situation. Now, there were opportunities to convert the first down. I don't hate seeing him actually try and throw it down to give his teammates and give the playmakers, the skill players, a chance to make a play. And that's what it really boils down to, I think. They didn't have Konate Mumfield. I'll check the stats, but Miles Alston played 1 or 2 snaps maybe at wide receiver. They had a few snaps where they, a handful of plays where they were in 2 tight ends and that kind of thing. But for the most part, this offense was Jared Wayne, Bub Means, and Jaden Bradley, plus Gavin Bartholomew and Izzy Abanikanda. I looked, from the start of the game. So they get the ball opening the game at the 5, right? They open the game at the 5, and they come out with Wayne and Bradley, plus Ryan Jacoby, Carter Johnson, and Izzy. First down. Second down, they just go Wayne. They bring in Daniel Carter. They take out Bradley and bring in Daniel Carter. Third down, they bring Bradley back out, and it's Wayne, Bradley, Carter Johnson, Ryan Jacoby, and Izzy. After that, they went with that personnel, that 11 personnel, with Wayne, Means, and Bradley, plus Bartholomew and Abanikanda. They went with that personnel grouping on the entire second drive, the entire third drive, the entire fourth drive, the entire fifth drive, the entire sixth drive, and the first 2 plays of the 7th drive before Vincent Davis came in on 3rd down and 7 from the 44. So they really stuck. Now, they were limited in their personnel. Konate Mumfield wasn't out there. Jalen Barden wasn't playing. Neither one of those guys was in uniform. So they were limited in their receiver personnel, but they just stuck with those 3. And I think it was, I think I've said before, I think it's the best formation for this offense, even when they want to run. I think it's best for them to go with 11 personnel, to put 3 receivers out there with Gavin Bartholomew and Izzy Abanikanda. Yeah, they got plays out of some of their bigger packages when they had Daniel Carter or they had Ryan Jacoby out there. I like that personnel grouping. But so you were missing Mumfield, you were missing Barden. I still want to give Means, Wayne, and Bradley chances to make plays down the field. I want those guys to stretch the defense, and I want to throw to them and give them a chance to make a play. I want to put the ball up every now and then and take a little bit of a risk of an incompletion, or maybe even a risk of an interception, although you'd like to think you'll throw it well enough and your receivers will fight for the ball well enough that you won't have that happen. But you've got to be willing to take shots. You've got to be willing to throw downfield. And we've been talking about this for 6 games now. We've been talking about this since September 1st, that at some point you have to be willing to test a defense, to stretch a defense. And there are times where it's not even about just showing that you're willing to do it. There are times when it makes sense. That first drive from the 5, they were lined up at the 5. And when they had first down at the 5, I don't think Georgia or Virginia Tech had any defenders outside of the 10. You know what I mean? And most of them were inside of the 9. And then they lose 3 yards on first down, and now they're at the 2. And I would say, I think almost all of Virginia Tech's defense was inside the 5 at that point. Certainly on the final play, on 3rd and 14 from the 1, all of those defenders were inside the 5. They did not think you were going to even try to throw the ball 7 yards. So you should have thrown the ball 7 yards, or in this case, 14. On 3rd and 14 from the 1, ideally you would have done it a little bit earlier on first down from the 5 or 2nd and 13 from the 2. You'd have tried to throw because they're not expecting you to do it, especially 2nd and 13 from the 2. You've got Jared Wayne, Ryan Jacoby, Carter Johnson, Daniel Carter, and Izzy Abanikanda. Play action, Carter Johnson's going to be open. You're going to have a shot to get the ball to him. And Jared Wayne might have single coverage, and if you run the right kind of route and play it right, you might be able to get something quick to him that picks up 7-8 yards. And 2nd and 13 can be, from the 2, could be 3rd and 5 from the 10. Doesn't that sound much more palatable and makeable than 3rd and 14 from the 1? But I mean, look, I think I'm preaching to the choir on this. I think everyone wants to see them throw the ball more, or at least try different things when they throw. I felt like, and we'll look at, it'll be interesting to see numbers on this. It felt a little bit like the Rhode Island game with screen passes, trying to use those. And there was one point where, I think a few times they had sent Jaden Bradley in motion, and I think even did it with Bub Means as well, where they sent him in motion and then threw a screen pass or behind the line scrimmage pass to him. And at one point later in the game, they tried to send him in motion and hope the defense would go with him and hand it off to Izzy Abanikanda. Unfortunately, most of the defense didn't go with Jaden Bradley because they were far more concerned about Izzy Abanikanda than they were about Jaden Bradley. But I digress. Whatever is holding Kedon Slovis back from taking a few more shots each game, from taking a few more risks, it's got to be rectified. If it's the directive from the coaches, they need to reconsider. And if it's Kedon Slovis' own reluctance, the next 2 weeks have to be spent getting him more comfortable trying those throws and being more decisive in those throws. Frank Signetti, when he was here 12 years ago, said decisive decision making. And I think that's actually something that is probably pretty relevant. And I think Pat Bostic is probably chuckling if he would hear me say that, because I think he would probably agree that Kedon Slovis is lacking in his decisive decision making. It's not what it needs to be, and it's holding back this passing game. When he's decisive, he's got the arm. He's got good arm talent. You like how the ball looks. He had the one nice throw to Jaden Bradley for a pretty good pickup. I think it was like a 37-yard gain or something. Looks great. I mean, looks like an NFL throw. It's great, but his decision making and his decisiveness and his hesitation in the pocket, it's holding the whole operation back. And they should really be able, you just had a guy run for 320 yards. You should be able to use play action at will going forward, particularly if you bring back Rodney Hammond, which I would expect him to come back after the off week. If you've got Izzy Abanikanda and Rodney Hammond that you can run out there and rely on for effective gains, you're going to be, play action should be like taking candy from a baby. It really should be there for the taking. And if they don't come out and utilize that, if they're not able to come out and be effective attacking that way, then you got to say there's some real issues in the play calling, in the design of the offense, and in the play of the quarterback. And that's the flip side of this game here. And in a way, Pitt fans, honestly, and we're going to get to the comments and questions here in a second, because I know there's a lot of you guys here, and it's awesome to see, and I appreciate you tuning in. In a way, Pitt fans, this game was, damn near perfect for you. First of all, you got a win, right? So you got a victory. You've got a record-breaking performance, an awe-inspiring performance, the kind of performance that makes you excited about an individual player and say, hey, this guy is awesome. He's going to be a great pro. He's a lot of fun to watch and all this stuff. But then you also got plenty to complain about, plenty for you to feel uneasy about. It's the best of both worlds, because you can be really mad about something and then also still have a victory. It's like, it's what everyone wants, right? All right, let's get into comments and questions. RJ Seaman is a 38 is a super chatter, so we got to go there first. If you want to be a super chatter, look, just click that. You can see in the chat screen right there. You can put your comments and questions in the chat screen, but if you want to make sure your comment gets read, your question gets answered, you can click that little $sign at the bottom and show some support for the podcast and be a super chatter, and we will definitely get to your comments and questions. And RJ Seaman 38 was a super chatter before we even started. Says Virginia Tech's defense, wow, they were god awful, and Pitt just beat the hell out of them all game, running until we had a 15-point lead and got cute. This happened twice. Narduzzi is worst at game management. See that? There we go. We're talking about game management. Got cute. On 4th and 3, they tried to shoot downfield, and they were unable to do so. They tried to take a shot. I guess, is that what we're talking about when we say they got cute? On the next drive, Virginia Tech went 3 and out. Oh, no. The next drive, Virginia Tech scored on a 43-yard touchdown pass. Pitt, then gave up another touchdown on the punt, the dropped punt. I don't know if there was anything cute about that. Pitt's next drive, they were unable to get the running game going, so they went 3 and out. And then the drive after that, they scored another touchdown and made it a 9-point game. Forced a missed field goal and scored an 80-yard touchdown to go ahead by 16. I don't know about game management. I mean, I guess at the end of the first half, there were some questions about how Pitt approached that sequence. I didn't really think there was too much. I guess, you get the ball back, at the end of the first half in terms of game management. You get the ball back at your 41 after Hubba Baldonado gets a piece of the punt and ends up sending it. They get the ball at the 41 with 2.5 minutes to go and I think 1 timeout. And they hand it off twice. And then on 3rd and 7, Keaton Slovis short hops, like 1 hops Jared Wayne, who, Wayne was open. And that was a pretty bad one. He had Jaden Bradley open too. On a pass that would have been short of the sticks, but quite frankly, and I don't think Bradley was going to get a first down. I think, he was short of the sticks. There was a defender closing in on him, but he was wide open. That was the kind of play they needed to throw on 2nd and 9, or even 1st and 10, 6-yard gain, 7-yard gain, something like that. 5-yard gain, just to get some more manageable down and distance. Which, obviously they didn't get in that situation. And then they had 1 timeout through Virginia Tech's drive. They ended up calling a timeout. We had 2 teams call timeout with 2 seconds left to play. And that was pretty awesome. But, I don't know what to say. I think there was some things to complain about in this game. I think, there was... I don't even know. For me... My biggest issue with this game, other than the run defense still giving up some more runs than they would probably like, the final stats ended up being Virginia Tech ran 30 times for 126 yards. But Malachi Thomas had 15 carries for 84 yards. That's 5.6 yards per carry. Keyshawn King had 5 for 26. That's 5.2 yards per carry. Grant Wells lost 20 yards, and that kind of hurt the averages and stats. But Thomas and King, 20 carries for 110 yards. I mean, that's pretty good running from those 2 running backs, and 2 touchdowns as well. I think the run defense is concerning. But as far as the offense goes, my biggest issue right now is how Keaton Slovis is playing. And his hesitation in the pocket, his reluctance to throw the ball downfield, to maybe make some riskier throws. And like I said, if that's a directive of the coaching staff, I think they need to reconsider it. And look at the big picture, not just, we're concerned about a turnover here, but look about the big picture of what impact it can have on your offense as a whole if you do test defenses downfield. That's my biggest concern. More than play calling, more than play design. I mean, maybe there are predictable elements in Pitt's play calling, predictable elements in Pitt's play design, but some of that I think can be worked out with more of a vertical attacking offense, and I think that's what they need to do. And I think they're holding themselves back by not trying to attack. All right, David Allen says, "What a great performance by Abanikanda, legendary." ZC717 says, "Amazing by Abanikanda, unbelievable. Take time in the off week to get healthy. So many banged up bodies right now." Yeah, they're in rough shape. I don't know what it is. People have said about strength and conditioning staff or training staff. I don't know if that's what the problem is. I can't say. I don't know specifically what every one of these injuries is, and I don't know which ones could have been prevented by different training methods or which ones are just fluke injuries or whatever. But I mean, Owen Drexel's out probably long term, I would guess. Carter Warren hasn't played in the last 2 games. Brandon George has been out for a while. Gonna guess he's gonna be out, for an extended amount of time. Konate Mumfield didn't play. Jalen Barton didn't play. Rodney Hammond obviously had missed time since the opener. Deslin Alexandra missed time. Those guys have both, Alexandra's been back for a couple of games. Hammond looks like he's close to coming back. Servassier Dennis leaves this game at halftime. I'm not sure what happened there. I presume it was an injury. He played until the final snap of the first half. The Hail Mary, I believe he was on the field for that Hail Mary that ended up being an interception by Eric Hallett. I have to go back and watch some of that game and to see if anything happened on that play or the play before it. He had a sack on 1st and 25, and that led to the back-to-back timeouts. But I don't know what happened there, but you obviously can't play without him, Panarduzzi seemed confident about, Servassier Dennis being able to return soon. But we'll see. I think we've all learned not to take Panarduzzi at his word about anything when it comes to injuries. It's concerning. It's concerning as these injuries continue to pile up. Nick Patty was out for a while. It looked like he was healthy and available for this game. And, conversation starts cropping up of whether they should change quarterbacks as these issues continue. I don't think I'm there yet. I think this is still the best quarterback on the team. I think, Slovis is. He just has to improve in some key areas. Let's see. Steak on the Grill says, hail to Izzy and the John Morgan hit and fumble. David Allen says, great point, Steak. The forced fumble is a huge play. That was an absolutely huge play. We talked about that a couple minutes ago. When that happened, Pitt had just... Virginia Tech had just cut it to 2, and Pitt went 3 and out, and Virginia Tech took over at their own 34 with a chance to, take the lead with a field goal and then potentially, go up by even more if they could score another touchdown. Getting a fumble in that point where Pitt really hadn't, they had the Eric Hallett interception at the end of the first half, but, in terms of a, in the middle of a quarter type of, turnover that generated a possession for the offense. This one was huge. This was the big one. This was the one. This was the only one. And it came at a crucial point in that game. So, and it was a huge hit by John Morgan and a great job by Shane Simon to recover it. And like we say, 2 plays later, Pitt got another touchdown and never really looked back. Excuse me. Scott Lynch says, I know Izzy dominated, but wondering if Rodney Hammond was really healthy today. I think there are some great opportunities with them on the field together using Hammond as a receiver. CJ Giulianti says, Scott, Noah Hiles from the PG tweeted out in pregame that a source told him Hammond would only play if injuries to the running backs required him to play. I think he'll be back regularly for Louisville. And I agree. I think he, I think Hammond probably could have played today, but you didn't need him when Izzy Abanikanda is out there breaking records. I think Hammond's going to be back for that next game after the off week. I would expect him to be ready to play, and I think they'll be able to go, instead of Izzy Abanikanda having 36 carries, they'll be able to, split him up a little bit more. And I think it comes back to, it's more important about that offensive line. If they can give those little creases to Hammond like they've been giving to Abanikanda, you're going to get big production out of it. Maybe not 320 yards every week, but some big runs and big production because I think both of those guys are really good backs who can take advantage of opportunities when they present themselves. Joe New says, our punter really stinks. Bad, bad, bad. It's concerning. That was a bad play, obviously. When the fumble, you fumble a snap right in that situation. That's a crucial situation. That's a high pressure situation. The last thing you can do is fumble the snap. Looking at starting field position, Virginia Tech. Let's see. So they had, drives that they started with a punt. Looking at field position when they received a punt. First one put them at Pitt's 38, which was after that drive inside, started at the 5 after Pitt failed down there and they punted. Virginia Tech got the ball at the 38. The next one from a punt, they got it at their own 32, one at their own 20, one at their own 15, one at their own 34, and one at their own 8. So not terrible field position, other than that first one where he was punting from his end zone. Not terrible field position from Pitt's perspective. The 32, the 20, the 15, the 34, and the 8. So, I mean, you have three, counting one at the 20 as being inside the 20. You have three that are at the 20 or closer, 20, 15, and 8, which is pretty good. But, yeah, I mean, I think I have my concerns there as well. I think he's improved. I do think Sam Vanderhaar has gotten better. Obviously, not when you're talking about, fumbling a snap, but I think his kicks have gotten better. I think he had better kicks today than he's had this season. He didn't do as much of I don't think he did any of the rollout stuff today. But I think he booted the ball well, just direct, straight snap, take it and kick. I think he kicked it a little bit better than he has. So maybe you're seeing signs that maybe there's some improvements happening there, incremental progress type of thing. And as he continues to grow, he's a young player. I mean, he's not a young person, but he's a young player in terms of experience, and some of that can take time. So we'll see. But I mean, I raise that as an issue and a concern. I think I talked about that this offseason, that there was some concern about what he was going to be able to do or how he was going to be able to do it. But I do think he's gotten a little bit better. Let's see. CLNETN says, update on Servassier, and was Mumfield injured last week? Yeah, Servassier, I don't know what's going on with Servassier, Dennis. I think it was an injury. I didn't see him come back to the sideline after halftime, but I presume he'll be back. Pat Narduzzi talked like he'll be back, after the off week. And as far as Konate Mumfield, I do think he got hurt in the Georgia Tech game. I think they held him out of practice or limited him this week, and he was not in uniform today. We'll see how long that issue lingers. I think he finished the Georgia Tech game, which would seem to indicate that it shouldn't be a long-term issue. But again, this off week is coming at a really good time for a team that needs to heal up and get a few guys back on the field. Let's see here. RJCman38 says, quarterback must be benched. Nate Yarnell's the future, and after what we experienced today and last week, let's turn the page. I think... honestly, I think you probably are going to have to lose another game or two with due to bad quarterback play before that happens. If you can have a game like this, and admittedly he turned the ball over with an interception, but where you run the ball well and he generally manages the game, I think the Pitt coaches would probably take that and continue going with it. Is my guess. It just, I don't see them making a change when the offense is running like it is right now. Even though I agree, I mean, something needs to give with the passing game. They need to get more production out of it. And, I don't know if Nate Yarnell or Nick Patty, I'm not sure who would improve that production, but I'm curious to see it too. But I also think, they're going to hitch their wagon to Keaton Slovis until he, probably, I would guess until he costs them a game. Or maybe another game, depending on how you view the Georgia Tech game. MW Pitt says, the bad kickers played for the other team today. Well, let's look at the punting. We looked at when Pitt punts, what was Virginia Tech's field position. Pitt, after a punt, got the ball at their own 5 twice. And then at their own 45, their own 41, their own 48, their own 44, their own 24, their own 35, and their own 44. Yeah, that's bad field position for Virginia Tech. If you're punting 5 and the 5, that's good. But when you punt Pitt to the 45, which led to a field goal, the 41, which was a 3 and out, the 48, which led to a touchdown, the 44, which led to a touchdown, and the 44, which was the end of the half, the 35, which led to a longer drive just to run time off the clock. You gave Pitt positive field position for an offense that I don't think, for the kind of offense that you want to pin them back far, because they haven't shown all season that they've been able to consistently convert long drives, so you don't want to give them any extra yards that they themselves don't earn. And Virginia Tech did that sort of repeatedly. That punter was not good. It was Beamer ball when they recovered the fumbled punt for a touchdown, but the punting itself, Virginia Tech's punting, was not very Beamer-esque. Let's see here. Pitman Zach 94 says, "Do you think Israel Abanikanda goes to the draft after this season and Rodney Hammond takes over next year's running back 1? Yeah, I do. That would be my prediction. That would be my expectation. I would not expect to see Izzy Abanikanda back on this team next year. I would, and not because he's transferring to USC, but I would expect him to go to the NFL. Particularly if he, I don't think he's going to have another 300-yard game this season, but he's got 830 yards. I mean, going over 1,000 is a virtual lock, even if he splits carries with Rodney Hammond the rest of the way. I mean, he's going to clear 1,000 yards. He's going to score. He's already got 12 rushing touchdowns. I mean, you got to think 20 is very realistic in the next 6 games. I mean, he's having the kind of season that leads guys to the NFL, even if it's only one. I think there's also enough in his body of work, his resume coming into it that, yeah, I'd be surprised if he came back. I think some drastic things would have to happen for him to come back to college and not go to the pros. And then, yeah, Rodney Hammond takes over as number 1. And I think, look, my preseason prediction was that, or at one point in August, I wrote this, and my prediction that Izzy Abanikanda would lead the ACC in rushing this year, and then Rodney Hammond would lead the ACC in rushing next year. So it's I'm off to a good start. We'll see what happens over the second half of this season and obviously next year, but I'm off to a good start. But yeah, I think that would be it. I think Hammond will be the guy next year after Abanikanda goes to the NFL. Benjamin Glazer says, "In all honesty, I skipped the post game last week. I missed the week of shows. I needed the break, but I'm glad you keep strong and above the fray. Appreciate your labors on our behalf." Yeah, it was funny to see. I think we had a lot of people in here for the post game show last week, even though it was like 1:30 in the morning. But Pitt fans definitely were frustrated and disappointed after that, and didn't always want to consume Pitt content in the aftermath of a loss, which I can understand. But I know there's a lot who still do want that content, and I know I still intend to put out that content. So, win or lose, there's going to be a morning Pitt every Monday through Friday. You know what I mean? There's going to be a post-game show after every game. There's going to be a Wednesday night live show, unless I have something else going on. I got to move it to Thursday, or got to move it to Tuesday, or something like that. Basketball season's going to mess that schedule up so much. I was just looking at the hoop schedule yesterday for no reason whatsoever. I was just looking at the hoop schedule, and yeah, the basketball season's going to totally screw up our live show. We might just pick a new night for it altogether. But we're going to keep doing this stuff. I mean, this is what we do. We put out Pitt content, and I think we put out really good Pitt content. So you should subscribe. Where's that subscribe button? Right around in there. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You should subscribe. Turn on the notifications so you always get an alert sent to your phone whenever we go live. You'll never miss any of it. And, of course, all the other content that we publish. We put out... the Morning Pitt Monday through Friday. Every day around 7 a.m. we release a new video just talking about Pitt stuff. And then, of course, we have our live show on Wednesday nights. And that's a long-running tradition of sitting down and talking about Pitt for an hour, kind of like this, where we do this with the comment section and the chat, and we just go back and forth and talk about Pitt for an hour. It's like a talk show, except you don't get to hear your voice. So I apologize for that. I could do voices, but I think that would just get weird. Which maybe some of these Panther-Lair Post-Game shows, maybe we do need to get weird. But, yeah, we're going to keep doing it. That's not going to fade. David Allen says, Chris Peak totally correct about his prediction of Abanikanda's greatness. Yes, thank you. And he says, there's no debate. Dorsett is the greatest Pitt player in Pitt history. The program was nothing before him for decades. Yeah, like I said, we could probably do a whole show on who's the greatest Pitt player in history. But you're not having that conversation without mentioning the name Tony Dorsett. I mean, that's inevitable. It's just a matter of he's in the top 3. It just depends on where you rank him among those 3. The Panther Room says, great win. If the quarterback can find some confidence, this team could turn things around. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Yeah, I mean, that's what the next 6 games are really going to hinge on. It's going to come down to Keaton Slovis's performance. And, that'll come back to something else we said all through August, all through July, all through the summer. And even in the spring, I feel like I hammered this point over and over again. And it wasn't some unique, amazing insight. It's just the reality of it that this team will go as far as Kedon Slovis takes it. And I'm saying this in the aftermath of a 320-yard rushing performance. You know what I mean? Like, literally the greatest rushing performance in Pitt history. And I'm sitting here saying to you, again, this team's success hinges on the quarterback. Because it does. And Israel Abanikanda, I think, is going to keep rolling. And I think Rodney Hammond is going to roll. But if this team really wants to make some kind of push in the second half of the regular season, it's going to be about Kedon Slovis. And if they have success in the second half of the regular season and finish with a respectable record or win the Coastal again or whatever it is, it's going to be because of how Kedon Slovis plays. It's going to be about the improvements he makes and the progress he makes and the development he makes. It's going to be about him having more confidence. It's about him finding his receivers, trusting his receivers, putting the ball out there and giving his receivers an opportunity to make plays. And then those guys making those plays. That's what this season is going to come down to. For all the questions about the defense and the questions about different positions within the defense, are they getting enough pressure? The linebackers playing well enough? Can the DBs cover without interfering? And today they couldn't. Is the offensive line going to get healthy? Is the offensive line going to be able to block? Are the running backs? Is this all the punting, the kicking? All these questions, the questions all over the place with this team. And it still comes back to Kedon Slovis. And if he's good to great, which he hasn't been, either one of those yet, but if he's good to great, they will win a lot. And if he's not, they won't. And this team is by no means perfect outside of Kedon Slovis. Like I said, there's questions at every position on this team. And there are things that are going to hold them back. There are things that are going to put them in jeopardy of losing games. This defense has major questions to me. The numbers end up being fine. They gave up 400 yards, which is a lot. 126 rushing yards, not that much. 4 of 16 on third down. That's good. What else? 277 passing yards. I'm kind of surprised by that. I don't really know where all those yards came from. They all went to number 80, actually. He caught 9 passes for $152. The numbers are okay, but it still sort of feels like, boy, they give up a lot against the run. Boy, they gave up a lot of key plays. Boy, they gave up a lot of big plays. They gave up a 43-yard touchdown pass. Gave up some long runs. What was a 5-yard run? They gave up a 19-yard run. They gave up a 43-yard touchdown pass. They just seem to get beat, and they get beat against the run more frequently than we're used to seeing from this defense. And that's a concern. But if Kedon Slovis can play well, if he can be good to great, then you can overcome some of those concerns. You can survive some of those shortcomings. When the defense gives up plays, you can go out there and answer. And that's the ability that they had last year. You didn't have to be too worried if the defense gave up some plays, because you had reasonable confidence and well-supported confidence that Kenny Pickett was going to go out and lead them down the field. Kedon Slovis is not Kenny Pickett, and he's not going to be Kenny Pickett, and he's not going to have a Kenny Pickett-like impact on this team. But there's space between Kenny Pickett and what Slovis has been this year, and he needs to get a little bit closer to the Pickett level than he's been at. He doesn't need to be all the way up there, but he needs to be closer. This is how this whole thing was supposed to work. And I talked about this on Friday. I think I talked about it on Wednesday night. I talked about the morning pit, the live show, all this different stuff. It was supposed to work like this. Kedon Slovis wouldn't be Kenny Pickett. Cornante Munfield wouldn't be Jordan Addison. Those guys wouldn't be the players that came before them, and they didn't need to be the players that came before them, because this offense was going to have more balance. And that guy right there, Israel Abanikanda and Rodney Hammond, and this veteran experienced offensive line were going to help establish a running game that took some of the pressure off the passing game so they could attack in different ways, be a versatile, multiple attacking offense, and establish the run game, beat you with play action. You wouldn't be able to stop them. You wouldn't know what's coming on, and they might not set a new school record for yards and points like they did last year, but they would score enough and be effective enough and be balanced enough to win a lot of games. But it hinged on a bunch of guys playing pretty well. Not necessarily great, but pretty well. And there haven't been enough key guys in the passing game playing at that level, playing at the level they needed to play at to help that passing game sort of complement and help take some of the pressure off the running game. And vice versa. The running game needs to take pressure off the passing game. The passing game needs to take pressure off the running game. That hasn't happened because the passing game hasn't lived up to it. And that's because Keaton Slovis hasn't lived up to it. And he's not the only issue. Like we said, I think the receivers can play better. Obviously play calling, play design, all those things could be better than they have been. But Slovis is sort of the one we hone in on. And I think rightfully so as the quarterback. All right, let's see. Getting through our hour, so I want to get to as many comments and questions here as we can. Let's see. ZC717 says, I think from what I see, it's confidence with Slovis. He almost feels like he has no confidence, and I think at times he's trying too hard. Yeah, I think some of that, and the Whiskey Coach follows up and says, Slovis came into the season as top 15 most accurate quarterback in FBS history in terms of completion percentage, and now, well, not so much. To this idea of him trying too hard or lacking confidence, I think maybe he's not anticipating guys getting open. Maybe he's waiting too long that the guy needs to be clearly open before he's willing to throw it. But even then, he makes some really questionable throws where guys are not even close to being open and probably weren't even open when he threw the ball. So I can't diagnose what those issues are. I can say that sitting in the press box, it looks like hesitation. It looks like reluctance. It looks like uncertainty. It looks like a lack of decisive decision making, to use a favorite Frank Signetti term. And it's, that's what it looks like. And maybe that stems from a lack of confidence. Maybe, I don't know if it stems from trying too hard, unless by trying too hard you mean wanting it to be a perfect opportunity for a pass rather than a good enough opportunity for a pass. I think there's a lot of, obviously a lot of room for improvement. Let's see. Ed Mahoney says, wow, just wow. One word I will dream about tonight, Abanikanda. What a performance. 2 other points. Offensive line played well. Concern at quarterback with the pass game. Don't know what is happening with him. Yeah, I think, if you, obviously Izzy was really good tonight, and I think we've known he's good for a long time. If you want something else to take some optimism out of, or positive thought out of this game, I think the offensive line, you have to feel good about how they played. Again, in the run and the pass. So they did a good job protecting Slovis, and then obviously they opened things up for the running game and gave Abanikanda a chance to make all those plays. And so that unit has been a big question mark. We talked about it yesterday on the Morning Pit about the question marks regarding the offensive line, and I think those guys did really well. There's something to be said for West Virginia and Tennessee maybe having the best defensive lines or defensive fronts that Pitt is going to face this year. And I think there's probably some truth to that. If they get into a run of facing defensive fronts that aren't quite as good, they might be able to build on what they did here today and carry that over and kind of do it consistently and become a stronger team up front. We'll have to see, what each of these teams looks like, but I don't think I look down the final 6 games aside from maybe Miami and say, boy, there's a defensive front that looks stronger or better than West Virginia or Tennessee, which, you get the toughest ones out of the way. You probably don't want to open against your 2 toughest defensive lines, but you got them out of the way now, so you can, just kind of move on, right? And maybe face some, ideally, lesser competition. Let's see. The Panther Room says, personally, I think Nick Patty could give this team a better chance to win at this moment in the season. BMX says, I'd rather have Nick Patty as well. I think I like Nick Patty a lot. I think Nick Patty has done well when he's been called on. I think Nick Patty has filled in admirably in the situations when he's needed to fill in. I don't know if he alleviates the biggest concerns, which is sort of attacking downfield. Now, if he's more comfortable in the offense and can, scramble or roll out and make passes a little more effectively than Slovis, then it's worth considering. But I'm going to, I think if I'm the coaching staff, and I imagine this is what they'll do, is I'm going to hold out for a little while longer because, like I say, Slovis has the superior talent as a passer. He just hasn't seemed to be comfortable out there. Royce Beacom says, is it true USC is about to offer Israel Abanikanda more money than they offered Addison? Yeah, possibly. But I'm also pretty confident the NFL will offer more than either one. So I think that's where he'll end up. ZC717 says, I'm fine with starting Nate Yarnell. In the passes he threw when he started, he throws a nice deep ball and is pretty steady in the pocket. At this point, might as well see what Yarnell brings to the table in the passing game. So I think you go with the, at this point, you might as well find out logic if you're just struggling all around. If you're running the ball well, like they have been, or like they did today, and for the most part of the season, I think they've been getting some success. Not always consistent, but I think getting some success. I don't think you roll the dice with a quarterback just to find out. You know what I mean? I think if your offense is just completely struggling and nothing's working, then you maybe look for a spark. That's why I asked Pat Narduzzi if he thought about that in the first half of the Georgia Tech game when Keaton Slovis was 2 of 10, for 8 yards. I said, did you think about maybe making a change just to give it a try and see if you could find a spark? But it just and he said no. He said no, it didn't cross my mind. Keaton Slovis is still the best quarterback on the team. And I think that's probably true. And I tend to believe him that they're not going to roll the dice, like I say, just to try and create a spark. If there's nothing going with the offense, if the running game is not working either, maybe they would look into it then, but not until then. Let's see here. BMX says, if I'm being honest here, Virginia Tech sucks and we struggled with them most of the game. We're not a good team. So, look, here's what I'll say on that topic, because as we're coming up here to 10:30 and got other things to do with post-game stuff. So I think this is kind of a good discussion point maybe to end on here, BMX. You say, we're not a good team. I would say this. I still wonder what kind of team Pitt is. I don't think I really know who Pitt is. I think they're 4-2. It's perfectly fine record. Still with a bad loss on there. I think they've had times where they've been really stout on defense and really shut down on defense, and their offense has sort of flowed and hummed and really got into a rhythm. And there's a lot of times, maybe even more times, where they weren't in that rhythm. Where they struggled, where they weren't able to move the ball, and it looked like any yard they got was a great labor, and where their defense looked too susceptible to giving up plays. They weren't effective stopping the run, and they were getting beaten coverage, and they weren't getting pressure on the quarterback. And special teams has been an adventure all season. I don't know if they're a good team right now, or a great team. Let me say that I don't know if they're a great team. They're probably not. I don't know. I think they're a good team, but there's a certain relativity at play here where you ask the question of how good do they need to be to win the Coastal? And that's not saying they should slack off and just take it easy, but it is saying that the bar is pretty low when it comes to winning this division. You don't have to be a great team to win the Coastal. The team that wins the Coastal is not going to be a great team. I think North Carolina beat Miami today, right? Are they after Duke lost, North Carolina's pretty much the best team in the Coastal, at least by the record. They're 5-1, and I forget what they are in the ACC. But they're by the record, they're the best team in the Coastal Division right now. And are you looking at Carolina and saying, boy, you've got to be a great team to beat them? I don't think you do. Because we saw what they did early in the season. We saw the struggles they had early in the season, and they still don't really defend very well. So is Pitt... Excuse me. Must be getting late in the show. Is Pitt a great team? Probably not. Is Pitt a good team? I don't know. Still waiting to find out. How good do they need to be to win the Coastal? Doesn't seem like they need to be all that great. I think they just need a little more consistency on offense and to kind of maybe settle down a little bit on defense. And they should be able to win a bunch of games out of these final 6. It's not to say they won't run into a stumble. Very well could. Very well may. Probably will. But again, this is not a murderer's row of teams coming up here in the next 6 games. And they should be able to win a bunch of them. They're 4-2 already. So it's not where you would want to be at the halfway point of the season, but it's not the worst place to be at the halfway. 3-3 would be much worse, right? 3-3 would be much worse. All right, listen, I got to get back over to Panther-Lair.com. You should go there too, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. Find it all at Panther-Lair.com, and of course, message boards where you can interact right now with other Pitt fans asking that question: is Pitt a good team? Well, are they? You can get into that discussion right now with other Pitt fans at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Listen, while you're here, subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and like this video. That helps a lot. We really appreciate it. And we very much would like you to be part of our YouTube friends and family, or whatever you want to call it. Pitt is off next Saturday. They don't have a game. It's an off week. We are still going to be here pumping out morning Pitt episodes every Monday through Friday. Every morning, right around 7 a.m., we'll release those. Monday through Friday, right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Talk about everything going on in the world of Pitt sports. And obviously, we skipped over a pretty big topic tonight, but we will get into it on the Monday edition of the Morning Pitt. So there'll be plenty of time to talk about that then. Thanks to everybody who jumped in tonight and watched the live stream. Thanks everybody who joined the chat and commented and asked questions. It's always a lot of fun. We'll be back for another live show on Wednesday night at 8:30 right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And in between, we will have the Morning Pitt for you every Monday through Friday, every morning, right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So have a great weekend. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will talk to you on Monday morning for the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.